So this is BOPisodes, which means Born on Purpose episodes. For you folks watching this thing, this is John Ballantyne. Finding people that have discovered their purpose in life and have a good amount of success in that purpose, and I think you qualify.
Right.
And I don't know quite what to call you, John. I guess you're like a project management, a senior project management, or a development consultant. I don't. What do you call yourself?
Well, I've always called myself a development consultant because of my background. My background's not project management. My background is in coordinating the early phases of development to get them into a construction. And historically, there's always been a PM somewhere along the line, and it's that PM that's then taken the job into construction. But to get it to a point where it's correctly coordinated from both the design, the feasibility, and a documentation perspective, that's really what I've been strong in, and getting that system sorted out.
Okay, and you've been doing that for how long now?
Well, I started life as a town planner, as a statutory town planner, enforcing town plans on unsuspecting communities. And as part of that, in the early days, I ended up working with communities that didn't need so much as a town plan, but needed a very simple document to help them promote and guide development, but giving more authority to the local authority to be quick on their feet, to respond to opportunities. Because when you're in rural areas and mining areas, you don't get inundated with development requests. You do need a scheme that needs to be flexible, that needs to be responsive to demand. And I ended up working in that ilk, and that's basically taken me to where I am, where I left town planning behind to become more involved in setting up and organising development.
Okay.
So that's basically where I got to.
Well, so what sort of educational background brought you to the town planning thing? Was it sort of an architectural based thing, or?
No, I did a master's in planning, urban and regional planning, and I've got undergraduate kind of majors in economics and history and English. So I come from a planning background, and that got me into statutory planning, and that interface with development led me into where I am today. I mean, I morphed out of town planning per se into development planning, okay. Not project management, but development planning, and then the systems to support that.
Okay, very interesting. Well, so tell me, and here's what I'm looking for. I'm kind of looking for the epiphany, the aha moment, maybe it was when you were a kid, maybe, I don't know, what was there a particular time that you went, oh, planning, that's the life for me. That's were you out on the playground and you were organizing the rest of the kids, or what? What was the situation that what kind of brought you to that?
I had a very, very successful earth moving business under my house at the age of 4 and 5, and I saw. And that was a very successful business, moving earth from one place to the other. My mother said I had to go to school. I went to grade 1 and I ran away on day 1, grade 1. I ran away from school because I saw no point in it. Came back home and got stuck back into moving earth underneath the house. Because in Queensland, our houses are all high set, so plenty of dirt to dig and trucks to drive around underneath there. Bob, I had no interest in anything except being a train driver, right, and working, shifting earth, and my mother said I could do all of this providing I finished school and went to university. So she played the biggest con game in the world on me. I got into planning by accident. It was purely accident, and you are right. I was on a football field chatting to a good mate of mine. He said, "What are you going to do next year?" And he said, "I'm going to go and do this Master of Urban and Regional Planning at the university." I said, tell me about it. I said, oh, I think that'd be okay. Another 2 years at uni. Sounds like a plan. Play a bit more football. That's what I did, and I quite enjoyed it.
Wow.
It was no epiphany, but I quite enjoyed it. And I think the epiphany is not so much working and planning. The epiphany has been the accessing or the introduction to some terrific people over the years. That's been my success. Well, I've really enjoyed that, and that's given me education and growth and given me direction. It's the people I've met through that business.
Well, and I have to tell you, John, that's one of the things that I admire about you is your ability, and so you're kind of blaming it on these great people that you met, but I want to blame it on you because John has this amazing ability to make things comfortable for people and create a friendly situation. Because when even in the foreign lands that you work in with different cultures, somehow you have an ability to make people feel safe and feel comfortable in your presence, and there's this friendship that happens even though there might be cultural barriers or language barriers. You walk around and people have smiles on their faces. So I think you would point the finger from your viewpoint saying, wow, I've met all these great people and they led me along. I would say you collected or you attracted or you created an environment for those great people to, kind of pull you along into what you're doing, because that's a tremendous asset to have and to cultivate as any kind of a planning or a project management situation. You've got to work with people, and it sounds like that started out early, when you're doing the town planning. You had to figure out a way for people to communicate and figure out what they were doing, and that's, I think, one of your talents.
And they're very kind words, and thank you for that, Bob. When I say I think in interaction tonight, I enjoy working with people. I've always enjoyed working with people. There are people you get more satisfaction out of working with others. There are people you generally and genuinely want to invest time and effort in because you have a reciprocal interest in what needs to be done, but what can also be done, and the opportunity to make a difference in what you're doing because of that relationship, to me, has always been an opportunity in itself, is to get to know people better and work with them. I enjoy working with people, and I think even when I was there with you guys, it was always the enjoyment of working with people, and the work was almost a byproduct. It was a good byproduct, but getting people interested and to getting them participating and then to roll out interesting things, always a great outcome, especially when you're doing it with people and you're enjoying working with those people. Now, I've worked with people that I can tell you that I don't particularly like, but at the same time, it didn't detract from getting a good project outcome. It just wasn't so much fun. And, that sheer drive of going to work to know that you're going to be meeting people that you like and you're going to be rolling up your sleeves with the people who want to do that. Hey, that's what gets you out of bed in the morning.
And I think that's a huge key. There should be a little bell or chime there, a lesson for people to take away, because that's, no matter what you're doing, no matter what the purpose is of you're doing, I think you just hit on it, John. It's if it's fun, it pulls you through, because life throws out some challenges sometimes. It puts roadblocks in the way, and if you're not having fun, the roadblocks work. They stop you in your tracks. And I've suffered from that. Where I just get too caught up in the roadblocks because I wasn't having so much fun. But so that's a key point.
There is a lot of detritus that can certainly block the drone. But you need to take stock make sure that you are moving in a direction which is going to benefit the people that you are supposedly wanting to effectively participate with. At the same time that you will yourself get something substantive out of it, not in a selfish way, but you've still got to feel you're accomplished. I mean, to not feel as if you've accomplished things, I think is a very detrimental position to be in. And whether that accomplishment is just seeing people around you enjoying what they're doing or working effectively with what you've all agreed that it's the way to go forward, yeah, it's definitely a two-way street. I mean, you get as much as you give, and possibly you'll get a lot more back than what you actually give.
Another pearl of wisdom from Johnny there. You actually, you actually get more than you give, you know, and that's so you want to be really, really selfish, give a whole lot, and you'll get way back more. So, and that's one of those secrets to life that people miss. I've missed, you know, is that giving part. And because when you what I've noticed from doing these interview things, everybody's kind of got their selfish purpose and what they want to do and what's interesting to them. But the main purpose that boils down to, it's usually helping other people. You know, why are they doing it? Why? It boils down to they're helping other people and they feel like they're helping. And that's the real juice behind it. And the real joy behind it. So, you know, I mean, I think, thanks for that, John. That's the wisdom that carries through. Well, so so you watched this sort of planning thing happening for quite a few years now. Just so people get to know you just a tiny bit, you played football, as in real football, not the American thing that we call football, where we don't use our feet.
No, I played Australian. Yeah,
Australian
I played a bit of
football.
rugby league, rugby union in school. I ended up playing Australian football just at the university. I never played professionally, just at uni, having a great time with good people.
Okay. And that, I'm sure that team spirit, because that's one of the things that is one of your strengths, in my opinion, too, is that ability to create and keep a team together. Was that something you did in football, or were you more of a player and you sat back and learned, or were you one of the leaders?
Oh, look, if you're a good, I was never a great football in terms of skills, and I love playing in a team with other players. I love the camaraderie. I enjoyed the successes. Always disappointed with the losses, but you always gave it your best shot. I love the camaraderie of the people I was with, and that's never been any different, whether it was in football, whether it's been through work or the clients you've worked with. I love that camaraderie, and I enjoy it. I'm not a singles player. I'm interested. I've been interested in playing tennis or playing golf. It's such a single thing. I've loved the action of playing with a group of people to get an outcome. That's been always my interest.
Where do you think that came from?
A big family. I came from a large family. You know, with lots of fun and playing out that we did in the bush. We lived up on a farm with Queensland, and running around all day with a tribe of people around you. Also the people to play with, talk to, get into mischief with. And I think you just get into mischief with people like you. But, you know, we're not in jail or anything. It's not that kind of mischief. But you just morphed it into, from playing in the river and playing with your mates on the football field, to playing with people in the commercial world and making sure that you never, I think my basic tenet is to never, ever, to the best of your ability, never do harm to anybody in business. I'd I'd rather not be particularly well in something than say that, you know, I screwed someone on the way through. I don't ever want to be known for having done that. I never want to be known for that. You do hurt people on the way through sometimes, and you can certainly think back, and that's usually through just lack of vision, lack of foresight, or it's never intentional. I don't think for people like us, it's not really intentional to set out to be Machiavellian, like many people do.
Mm-hmm.
But you do end up, you often hurt people on the way through, and that is, I think, if you talk about regrets, and you think that'd be my regret, is that some people have been hurt on the way through, unbeknownst at the time.
Okay, so but not intentionally, but you know, when you're banging around, I mean, you know, you could consider that you hurt the other team when you win, but you know, you know, but yeah, it's a competition type of thing, you know, and you know, that word competition comes from a Greek word that, you know, the Greeks started the Olympics and they trained together, and that was the point of the competition, was to help everyone get fit, help everyone get better, and then ultimately they would have a winner. But the whole point of it wasn't just to be the winner; it was to collectively get everyone fit. That's the root of the word, and I think
yes,
yeah, that you know, that's one of the key points. But you've been in big business things. I mean, big, huge, you know, millions, if not billions of dollar type of developments and planning production things. So,
yeah,
big stakes sometimes will draw not so great people, you know, I think.
That's true. You've certainly hit all types. And you know, occasions you do tend to overstretch yourself. Perhaps you overstretch yourself. You don't do as good as what you should have done, or you could have done. Being overstretched, you sometimes take on more than you should. But having said that, as a rule, good outcome being achieved.
That's good. Okay. I guess one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was that how you see this planning and development stuff. What state of affairs do you think things are in these days in that arena? Do you think? I don't want to point the question too much, but development guys, they're out to make money. You know, they're out to. Sometimes they're out just to make money. You know, they're just developing things so that they can fill their pockets with money. There are others that are out to make something of substance. You know, like our boss, I think he makes a lot of money, but I also think that he has a big heart about creating an entertainment center, bringing entertainment to people, and that's what really fuels him. Talk a little bit about the state of affairs in development land out there. What do you think the percentages of people that are just out there to make a buck versus people that are trying to make something of substance?
I think the percentage is definitely swinging towards the people that want to do something of substance. I think the rapacious periods that we went through in the 70s and 80s, I think, are basically petering out. I think the new age developers that are coming through have a far better balance, a social justice balance in terms of what they deliver. There will always be guys that are driven solely by the bottom line. And all good companies have to have a strong bottom line responsibility. But I do believe, from the developers that I'm mixing with these days, the change of attitude, the need to provide a responsible development for people to live in or to participate with is becoming preeminent. They have to make money to keep going, but one of the drivers is also to ensure that what they deliver is going to be beneficial to the community that they're delivering it to. And that's just being smart, because that will give them more credibility going forward. And the gentleman you refer to, and as to your principal, he is, I believe, a socially aware individual and responsible for both the people he employs, but also for what he delivers into the marketplace in an incredibly socially responsible way, to the point that I think he's a standout. From what I've seen, he's a standout within China. It's my personal opinion, and having worked there for the period I did, I think I can make that statement quite comfortably.
Yeah, I believe that from him.
Yeah, but I reckon percentages are definitely on the side of the more thoughtful, socially responsible developers these days. I see that in the one. Nobody's out there trying to just hammer bottom line. They want to ensure that they're delivering product of quality that is beneficial, generally beneficial to the bottom line, to the people it's concerned, and giving them information in which to go forward as well into future development. So the good guys are winning.
Well, that's good, and I think that long-term sort of investment that comes from that intrinsic value that they're trying to put there is, it's that same thing of winning. It's finding the joy and having that joyful purpose being the thing that drives things, and that's a much more long-term currency than an immediate sort of thing, which is another kind of lesson in life that we all have to learn as we grow up, in our selfishness of if you're going to be healthy, you gotta, you don't just go to the gym 1 week and you're healthy for the next 10 years. You gotta continue going. Unfortunately.
That's exactly.
So, okay, well, that kind of brings up the next point, or the next question is, what challenges are you seeing in your industry now?
The globalisation of development is intrinsically so cross-border that a hiccup in one particular area can have a substantial knock-on effect across a broad range of development. Now, obviously, in terms of market supply and demand for different, for material products, for consumer products, you can see that it's affecting development as well. Projects which you would think are not affected by this, the money is drawn from such varied resources that lenders in various areas will eventually say, we have a problem, there is a problem there. They'll extrapolate that problem and say, we may have a problem here, even though it's not related, put everything on hold. So that's an issue in terms of that the current market looks at. People who have projects you wouldn't think would be affected are affected because of the globalisation of money. There is also, in developed countries such as Australia and developed countries, the approval system is burdensome. It is not structured. It is a challenge to proceed through in a reasonable period of time to get your project up and running. Governments have little concept of time cost of money, and that's generous. I'd say they've got no concept of time cost of money. They don't understand what developers have to go through to get to the get-go of having a digger start on site and start moving out. Project I'm working on at the moment, the council wants over 12 months to review a development approval, a development application, after we've already had the rezoning approved. Over 12 months. It's just ridiculous.
Wow.
And mind you, the developer's got to sit on that land. He's got the outgoings of holding costs, and all of the above. The government would say, well, that's your risk. Not very well, but they'll be proudly say that when he starts working, he's got 2,000 people working on. So here's an example of us doing well in the marketplace. It's all very one-sided. So for me, a government is, no matter how hard they say it, they are an impediment to effective development. So they're the two things I say: globalisation of money and government. Now, in many parts of Asia, the role of government is a lot more opaque, perhaps, due to the nature of various economies. But still, they can have a very marked effect on the expeditious progress within a correct format of development, and can really impact on whether a project is completed correctly or poorly.
Is there a fix for that? Or is it just, you know, the quagmire of politics being what it is? I mean, do you think that there's a solution?
I think we've got governments in developed economies like Australia they enjoy the impact, I think, of small self-interested groups to the detriment of the greater community. And I think that's going to get worse. I mean, these small, they become quite powerful because they might represent certain elements of society, but the greater majority of people are too busy getting on, working, paying their taxes, raising their family. They haven't got time to go and run around promoting self-interest. In developed economies, that's going to get worse. I think in developing economies, the need for proprietary governments to conduct themselves in an above-board manner is important. And you look at the exemplary examples of places like Singapore and Hong Kong, which are so good in terms of being proprietary in the way they conduct themselves. And there are many countries that have gone through the difficult phase of being not transparent in the way they do their business. That's changing a lot, and that will only benefit, I think, at the end of the day, the product that's delivered for the people who will utilise that product. Having said all of that, for all the great policies and procedures we've got in Australia, you'd be well aware of the very poor construction outcomes that occurred in Sydney on a range of big projects which are essentially uninhabitable due to poor construction performance. And, that's in the shining light of Australia.
Wow.
So, so systems can go wrong even when they think they've got them absolutely above board. And I don't know the answer. I don't know why or how it happened, but there are a lot of people down in Sydney that have bought into these properties that have got genuine problems, and I don't know what the outcome's going to be. But they should never happen. Should never happen.
Wow. Well, that's a tough one because you do. I mean, there is a juxtaposition between codes and restrictions and building standards, etc. That should be, and governments have to get involved in that in terms of you're a developer, you want to make something that's great, but we have to make sure that it's safe. So versus getting things done and that balance that you're talking about, and it's swaying one way or the other for good or bad reasons. That's a tough struggle to try to do. But like you say, Hong Kong did well, and Singapore's done well with regard to that.
Oh, lots of other countries have done well too, but I think it's that word you struck on there is the balance. And sometimes, even in developed economies, we swing too far one way, where the pressure to deliver by in a self-certification environment can put pressure on the certifiers to write down their fees and therefore participate less on site to ensure the appropriate construction quality occurs. Whereas in the old days, with for example, a council providing the building surveyors and inspectors, that was never going to be the case. But it was probably slow. Well, it was slow. And they held a lot of power, and perhaps the thought was that maybe the private sector could do it better. There is an issue of balance that needs to be addressed, and I'm sure they're all looking at that right now.
Wow, okay. Well, let's switch from that to let's look at opportunities. Where do you think things are headed? People are always going to develop. Do you think it's going to be new development? Do you think it's going to be repurposing stuff that already exists? Mm-hmm. What are the opportunities that are out there, you think?
I think it's a combination of repurposing. There's no doubt that repurposing of structurally sound, well-positioned, as in terms of location, buildings, will continue on mainly to preserve, well, not just to preserve, But some of those buildings are iconic. They're in great locations. They are able to be repurposed reasonably economically and put back into the marketplace in very new forms. And you've seen that in places like in every city in the world where office buildings have been converted into residential, or old warehouses that are no longer relevant in their locations have been converted into fantastic accommodation opportunities, retail opportunities, food and beverage opportunities. That will continue for a couple of reasons. It's economic to do so. The community doesn't want to see necessarily iconic buildings destroyed to make way for something which may not be much better. But at the same time, the ability to refurbish also minimises the overall construction impact in terms of time that can be experienced with demolition and reconstruction. Now, demolition and reconstruction will occur where you've got buildings which really have served out their life cycle. They're finished and they're done, and drop them and start all over again. And we're seeing that with buildings now that are 40 or 50 years old in many urban environments where they're no longer economic in their current form or their footprint or their floor area to respond to the inherent value of what is the land or the location, and they do need to go. New opportunities, I think, really relate to how we manage our cities and the infrastructure related to our cities. Our cities are big already. They're a huge strain on resources. We are great incrementalists in terms of the way we manage our cities, and therein lies the problem, because the people at the core suffer from the impact of all the outlying areas, and it just goes around and around. The opportunity, I think, is with proper infrastructure, and I'm talking about perhaps fast rail or better roads. I'm really thinking public transport here, not more roads, to strategically locate cities, new cities, in proximity to existing cities served by excellent public transport, network connections, is a real opportunity for governments and for people to think through going forward. So to locate almost smart, it's a terrible term, smart cities, but cities where people don't have to rely perhaps so much on cars, where there is better public transport, maybe automated public transport, where the network can use, and I'm talking about the access network within that area, can utilise shared public electric bikes, electric cars, or whatever it happens to be, to minimise the environmental impact, but having that a very quick, clean connection through to the major metropolis to do what has to be done there, but much of it can be done off-site, like you're working from home. Many people are working from home. I work from home. You know, I work from where my computer is. And that's probably going to give great opportunity for people in the future. Development will occur in traditional forms, as in subdivisions out in the fringe areas, but I think that the ability to develop proper new towns, and I don't mean the new towns that they built in the UK, but I mean new towns which are focused more on how people live in the town, how they interact within the town, how the communities interface within the town, how the business communicates within the community, within the town, how people move around that space, the open space networks, how they bring people together. Whereas the old days of big roads, cutting communities, you've got to get away from them. Whether they go underneath green spaces on the top, we'll always need roads, one form or another. It's how you put them in place as an important link, but not at the cost for integrating the community. I think there are big opportunities there in the future.
Are you familiar with, and I'll bring this up for everybody out there in the audience that sees this as well, have you heard of a guy named William McDonough? He's an architect from the U.S. Actually, he was, he was raised in Hong Kong, but he ended up being the Dean of Architecture for the Virginia University. He has a concept that he developed with another gentleman called Cradle to Cradle. And I would encourage you just to pass this along.
I'm familiar with the Cradle to Cradle concept, yes.
Okay. Well, William McDonough
I
was...
didn't realise it was part of that.
Yeah, he was one of the authors there. So, and there's a couple some TED Talks. There's some great videos on it. Really intelligent guy, and he talks about the very things that you're bringing up here. We went through a huge change. We, as in humanity. I mean, right after World War II, we had this sort of boom in the West, and it was. We had this viewpoint that all the resources were unlimited, and you know we could grow, and we made a lot of that stuff. And now, like in the U.S., that a lot of that infrastructure that was created back in the 50s, now it's starting to crumble. You know, it's having to be replaced. And like as you mentioned, some of those buildings that were put up with not such long-term vision or a different vision than we have now. Have to either be repurposed or taken out and redone. And we're doing it a little bit more smartly now, hopefully.
So, yeah, I think we are. I mean, you have places like the Meatpacking and the Garment District in New York, the old Print District in Chicago. You go down into even places like Omaha and Kansas City, and they're reusing those fantastic old warehouse buildings and creating great living spaces and entertainment spaces and people spaces. I think there is a great focus on it, and I think we can see it in many buildings in which we're in older communities, the UK, obviously the States, Australia. Newer economies don't necessarily have those buildings, but because they are newer economies, and perhaps the buildings weren't built with so much longevity involved. I mean, Singapore's done some fantastic stuff with its colonial buildings. So is KL. I mean, they realise the value of those as a part of their cultural heritage, and they're making sure they get used properly to give them a genuine role going forward, whether it be for governmental purposes, for private sector, for accommodation, hotels, whatever it happens to be. But they're jumping in and saying, well, let's do something beneficial with these. And I think that adaptive reuse is going to be, will continue to be very strong. And I think development will continue on with certain buildings, life cycle, time cost, gone, finished, let's build it properly, let's take advantage of position over top of a railway station or whatever it happens to be. These things will continue to occur, as will fringe development. And hopefully more integrated, newer, I hate to say the word new town because there's such a dreadful connotation attached to them, but new cities is probably a better word. New urban cities.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty simple.
Better than thought out. So, okay, so, you know, before we wander off on another subject, because we've talked a little bit about it, about what mistakes are being made? What are the errors to warn us from in your mind? What and without kind of repeating what we've talked about, because we've kind of talked about the good directions that we should be going in, but are there some big mistakes that you're seeing out there?
Well, I think macro mistakes relate to reliance on projections for various types of social need. By that I mean we won't need this until 2031, we won't need that till 2045, and next thing you know, we turn around, probably exceeded that last year, but we don't have either the money or the ability to respond in a timely manner. I think that's a problem. I still think that it's not as bad as it used to be. Infrastructure was very unglamorous for governments. It wasn't a thing of great beauty. It wasn't like a new opera house or something like that, but the role of infrastructure and the need to provide effective infrastructure, that hasn't been of key importance in the past. I think that's definitely changed. So that's a big problem I think that's being addressed. And it's an expensive problem, but it's a great employer, and it's a great user of resources. It's got great flow-on effects in the economy. I think that's probably, for me, there's issues of mining, and I think they're just generational issues. They'll be addressed in due course, but I don't think anybody's doing anything really bad. I don't believe so. I think it's all very microcosm stuff.
Okay. That's one of the maybe advantages that we have from our newfound communication skills and our instant ability to learn about stuff, and there's a little bit more transparency about who's doing what and how it affects things, and we can get that information back as opposed to working in a little bubble and not figuring out that what we're doing is stupid or wrong or wasteful or whatever it might be. We get the feedback sooner. In that way, the internet and kind of global, conversations have helped us to get a better feedback. And I think it's interesting living here in China, and I don't want to bring this up as a big controversial thing, but it's the whole thing of what's allowed to be communicated. What is are the news channels? How free is the open communication outside of the borders and inside the borders? I think the cat's out of the bag now. As hard as a government might try to keep their population from knowing this or knowing that, it's pretty much accessible to anyone now. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's out there. If people want to find out, they can. If they want to find out, they can. I think in our societies, in like Australia, if you want to find out the truth, you need to do it yourself, because you sure can't rely on the media.
I think I agree with you. I mean, the media is owned by whoever owns them, and they may want to manipulate it one way or another, but the advantage that we have, and we've always had as sentient beings, individuals, you work hard enough, you can go find stuff out. And that's another kind of key pearl of wisdom is, and stuff that I've seen you employ in a microcosm. There's a problem in construction, or there's some issue, you roll your sleeves up and you dig in and you go find out what's the issue. As opposed to averting it or believing some other truth. You can actually just hold the train. Everybody, we're stopping the thing on the track right now, and we're going to investigate. We're going to find out what the issue is and what the problem is. And I've seen you literally do that with, within the organization. That when I work with you, is you, instead of letting the problems kind of slide by and continue to have a hold up,
stay frosty.
It's that individual saying, no, wait, we're not moving on until we figure out what is this conflict, and what are the two sides of it, and what are we trying to solve, which is that another gift that you have in terms of that social thing of, hey, the team's not working. Ultimately it's going to stop everyone. So what is this issue that's now a conflict, and what are the two sides of it? What are we trying to accomplish? And I think people have more exercise or more access, I guess is the word. The trick will be the motivation to get them to use it.
Yeah, sure.
And that's
always
that's
they put a lot of pressure on them to do a lot of things. I mean, people, they work hard to make the money. They have a family, they have kids, they got a life. They're trying to live a life, and then to a certain degree, you rely on certain people to give you what you believe is the truth, and they obviously all put a spin on it to suit whether it's their particular, whether they're left, middle, or right-wing organisation. They put a spin on it to suit that particular political or social bent that they have. Some people just don't have the time to work through that information to get to a position where they feel that they've got a good balance on which to make a decision on a current circumstance. And that takes time, unfortunately, and some people just don't have the time.
Okay.
They rely on everybody else to give them what they believe to be the truth. It's like the great toilet paper fear in Australia. We haven't got any toilet paper. Goodness gracious me.
Oh my God! Toilet paper.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I mean, and that's and that's the
sensationalising from the media, but
right.
Stock up. It's going to be the end of the world as we know.
Yeah. Well, if you get the coronavirus and it's only a cold, how are you going to blow your nose? You know, if everybody's blowing their nose, there's no toilet. What are you going to do? Oh my God, we might have to use a hanky. Remember those?
Things that you wash
and
use again.
Yeah, instead of just tossing out. Yeah, it is pretty silly. Well, that's a good point, John. And I think, maybe that should be the theme here is everybody kind of stop, take stock, use your brains, use your own judgment, your own ability to evaluate what's going on. Don't just believe the internet. I mean, we had a rash of that internet stuff where you put it up on the internet and it's total crap, total BS that somebody's putting out there, but they put it out there. Yeah, and now you have the ability to research it. And it doesn't take that long, really. It's not that hard, to inform yourself. So
you can just adopt the attitude that 95% of what you're told in the media is probably blown out of all proportion. So you divide it by 95 and come up with that's probably it. Okay, I don't need to be right. Move on. Got other things to do.
And I think that is the kind of the other lesson to poke at a little bit is that we have influence over what we have, depending on what you're doing. In your position, you get influence over lots of people and lots of different aspects of the people for a big project. But you don't worry about the stuff that's happening in the other nation so much. You stay focused on what you can control and what you do have influence over, and not get caught up or frozen by stuff that's out of your control.
Yeah, very true, man. That's very true. You need to stay a little bit focused because it can get a bit overwhelming if you try to take it all on board.
Yeah. So it's we have access to all of it, but our concerns should be maybe more self-centered in that way. And that same thing we talked about of you have a purpose in life, something that you want to do, get after it. And that thing will probably make life better for everybody in some rippled way. But if you're so concerned about how terrible things are for the other guy that you're not even near, you're not doing what you want to do. Let's kind of switch in. We'll kind of wind down here a little bit. If somebody's interested in your field or your industry or your type of business, maybe a young person or maybe somebody that's midway that's kind of thinking of changing streams or we said something here today that went, hey, that sounds cool. How would you go about getting started? What would be your advice to them?
You need to make the decision whether you're interested in design or organisation. You're interested in design, which you can't not do what we've both done and not be interested in design. But my interest has been to make sure that you've created a platform on which the designers can do what the designers should be doing, is giving good outcomes. It depends what you want to do. I never wanted to be a designer. When I realised what I was doing, what I really enjoyed doing, I wanted to make sure that we provided the correct environment in which to achieve good design outcomes. Let people work to their strengths. So if someone's interested in the organisational side of it, and you don't want to be just involved in project management as an on the side, make sure the project gets built. For me, a planning degree would be critical, but I would also today strongly recommend a degree or a skill where you've got a very strong understanding of the economics of development, very strong understanding of the feasibility of how you make it work. That would be my shortfall, would be I've had to learn most of that on the run. I don't have a degree in commerce or international business, so I had to learn a lot of that on the way through. But starting out again, I would try to combine planning with that type of economic background to give you a far greater base with which to assist the right developments to get through.
Golden advice. I think that you're right, because it is economically, it has to be feasible what you're trying to do, and those decisions that come along the way of, and it's about deciding how perfect it needs to be. I think that's one of the gifts that your former boss has, and my boss has, is he kind of knew when to say, hey, put the pencils down, and even though it wasn't as good as it could possibly be, things can always be better. So if you're going to finish them, at some point you got to say, that's it, it's good enough. Good enough is perfect. And that is often determined from an economic viewpoint, from a fiscal sort of, how much is this going to make versus how much we're going to spend on it, and making that economic decision. So wise advice there, John, to understand that bit of it. And if you are doing big international things, you need to understand that international economics that are associated with it.
I guess not to ignore the fact you do need to understand interpersonal relationships, and I think that's something you learn. You learn on the way, but something that gives you a little bit of an insight into that, and a little bit into organisational aspects as well, and the role of helping to bring development to fruition. There's no one magical tool to do that. It really is. It requires skills in 4 or 5 or 6 different areas to give you a good basis on which to get the right people involved to get the right outcomes. And I think that's the key thing, is to understand who are the right people to give you an outcome. And I also think it's important to let them do their job. But obviously, as you've just said there, you've got to know when to stop, when enough is enough, when you've got it to the point where the last 5% is directly costly, so costly that it's not worthwhile doing. Directly inversely proportional to the outcome. You've got to know when to stop. And you're right, your employer, he knows the point where this is going to fit the bill. Stop it.
Good.
And that's a good development. That's a good development.
Yeah, that's a good development, because it gets out there. Because I've often, because my flag is the design flag, so I'm always trying to hold up that quality kind of thing, because they always say there's 3 components. There's cost, and there's time, and then there's what's the other one? So we have the quality, we've got the cost, and we've got the time. And I always say nobody buys a ticket to a park or to an attraction because it was built on time or that it came in on budget. They do it because of the quality. But the opposite side of that coin is, if it's not there, they can't buy a ticket for it. No matter.
Yeah.
So.
But they come back because of the quality.
Yes.
They might go once, but if the quality ain't right, they won't go back.
Right.
And I think the big benefit of your employer is the repeat visitation is substantial, and that is, I think, a response to both the innovation it delivers to the product and the quality with which it's delivered and the quality with which it is maintained.
I agree. Well, cool. Well, thanks so much, John.
Okay. Cool, mate.
Anything else you want to say? Any other pearls of wisdom you want to drop on us before we go?
I didn't know I had any pearls of wisdom in the first place. But no, it's been good fun, Bob. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it. It's been good fun. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, thanks so much, John. I appreciate you taking the time with us. It actually ran deeper than I thought it was, in terms of the whole social economic things and all that good, wonderful stuff to talk about that kind of work in and they work out from a big perspective to a kind of a personal perspective. But I appreciate you taking the time with us, John. I know it's storming there in Australia, so our internet connection was a little bit funny, but hopefully the editor will be able to catch everything that we talked about.
I've sorted it out, and it's all it's almost too hot to touch now. It's red hot.
Okay. Okay, John.
Cook an egg. See you, mate.
Thanks a bunch. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay. Cheers, mate. Bye.